start. Welcome to the Town of Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the regular meeting on Monday, April 14th, 2025, commencing at 7:02 p.m. We will start with our call to order. I know Tom is not attending and Richard is not attending. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, I'll take one person. That's fine. Um, being that I don't see any of our alternates here, if they join us, then we can seat them for Tom, Richard, and I don't see Luther on board yet either. So those remain open spots. Okay, so we will have 6 commissioners, which gives us a quorum for tonight, so we can have our meeting. People keep making noises and coming in here. Let me see. Okay, very good. Approval of minutes from March 10th of 2025. Uh, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept them.
Yeah.
Janet.
Janet Bellamy moves. Is there a
And
second?
Jerry second.
And Jerry Dufresne second. Any discussion on them? Any changes or corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes from our March 10th, 2025 meeting, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, so again, that's 6-0, unanimous, Cheyenne. Public comments. So we are open to public comments. This is to topics or items not otherwise listed on the agenda that have a specific hearing or an application in form. Is there anyone for public comment? Seeing no electronic hands, seeing no one waving at me in their picture. We'll move on from public comment. I do have a public comment, except I think those that are on here know that there'll be no POCD this Thursday. We're taking a week off. Plus I'll be away. So, no POCD this Thursday scheduled. We will commence for the following Thursday. We just have to work twice as hard next week. That's all. Okay, bills, I know of none. Do you have anything, Mike?
Nope, no bills on my end.
No. I just sent Cheyenne an email, asking, if she has, Cheyenne, do you have that invoice, template that Valerie was using?
I do. I was going to just put March and April's minutes together and then send them over at the end.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. However you want to, don't get too far past a quarter. That's all.
Will do.
Finance comes after me at that point.
I'll take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You'd like to get paid, right? Okay. So bills other than that, none. Correspondence, we did receive a notice of certain planning and zoning matters in neighboring municipalities, which is a requirement of Public Act 87307 for zoning, planning, and inland wetlands commissions and zoning boards of appeals required to notify the clerk of any adjoining municipality of the pendency of any application, petition, request, or plan concerning any project on any site in which affected properties, 500 feet of the boundary, everything that you can read from their March 21st, 2025 that is in the meeting material. It is regarding the application is for a PZC initiated amendments to Article 8190-65 of the zoning regulations related to agriculture. And there is a public hearing scheduled in Mansfield, a hybrid or town hall, Mansfield Town Hall at 4 South Eagleville Road at 6:05 on April 21st, 2025. And there is a copy of the final draft for the public hearing of the agricultural uses, purpose, definitions, standards, and then getting into their charting of the number of animals and permitting and the number of animals allowed on a certain size of land. So we have been duly noted and addressed. Thank you, Mansfield. Moving on to number 6 in our public hearing. We have no public hearing scheduled for tonight, so we will move on to unfinished business. We'll start with a POCD update from our 328 listening session recap. I asked Mike if he could bring up the slides just to show the group, those of you who weren't able to attend. It was well attended. I'm very, very proud of the Ashford citizens. I think we did a nice job in posting it and warning it in the Citizen, as well as online Facebook, Ashford Community Connections. Again, we had approximately 50 citizens along with well, we had 5, so we had over 50. We had more like 52 plus the 4 members that were able to attend of the POCD. I want to thank any of the commission members that were able to attend also. And we're just going to do a quick run flip through of what we were showing them. Again, pizza was eaten, ideas were shared. The work that we've done so far of the POCD looked good to people. I don't think there was a disparaging word. I think we got some good input. And we want to thank Mike and Tyke for putting together the slides. The basis of the slides were work of the POCD. And again, just to remind you, the members of the POCD, besides myself, are Janet Bellamy, Luther Brosh, Mark Schnabel. We also have the 2, I'll call them lay people, the people not on the board. We have Christina Sebo and Nora Galvin that are proving their worth to us. They're really great folks, also wordsmiths, and looking at the text. Mike, do you want to move on?
Yeah, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. Let me just let Doug in.
Oh, great.
Doug is here.
Doug is here. Okay. Is Doug viable yet? Can he see us?
Good evening, Jeff. Yep,
Hello,
Doug is here.
Doug. Thank you for joining. I'm assuming, well, I'm going to seat Doug for Tom Hastings, Doug Jenny for Tom Hastings at 7:10. Thank you, Doug. So again, we went through the introductions, who we were, what we were doing, and the goals of the listening session. Again, the listening session itself was one of the ways we're reaching out to the community, giving kind of full transparency of what we're dealing with, what we're working with. The next couple of slides that Mike shows has to do with, again, what a POCD must consider. And all of these items are in the statute for developing a POCD, each municipality. Again, the affordable housing and such, all those lists there. What a POCD may consider in that, and that's where we kind of extend the needs. It's not just we're not using it just to show goals and objectives and movement by the Planning and Zoning Commission, but we are also reaching out to the different disciplines, the different boards, commissions, agencies, and getting their input, as well as finding out what they want to accomplish in the next 10 years for Ashford. Go ahead, Mike. How a POCD is used for implementation with special studies, zoning and text amendments, and grant applications. Again, we need to have our POCD in by middle of July, I believe, in order to be I keep forgetting this word. God. And be approved for future grants and the application for state grants. We went through the process of the overview. We're reviewing the existing program, the POCD from 2015. We're reaching out to stakeholders. We've done the survey and the citizen, and then we've done the community listening and session next. Developing plan, vision, goals, the plan draft, and the public hearing and adoption. Again, our public outreach has been to reaching out to the boards, commissions, committees, and citizens and gaining input. We've reached out to each of the committees in town, asked them for their input, any narrative changes from 10 years ago, which was from the 2015, plus any goals and objectives. We've also done the 16-question public survey, as I mentioned. We did receive 198 responses. I will also mention that we received 486 written responses to the 3 narrative questions at the end, with some good input there. And we had the March listening session. So we've shown ourselves, we've shown our hand, we've shown what we've worked on, and it seemed to be going in the right direction. And I don't want to just take this over. I don't know if I know Mark and Janet are here tonight. If you have any further input.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I'm going dry here. Hang on. Okay, next slide. Again, what we found was, and was great, we were able to use some of the technology. I think I mentioned this before. We put it through Chat GPT, one of the AI programs, and it allowed us to really identify both what the residents hope for over the next 10 years from those 486 written responses, and what they worry about over the next 10 years, both the up and the down. And again, a lot of it had to do, obviously, very similar themes. You had the rural character, preservation, and loss, potential loss of that, economic development versus rising property taxes, infrastructure improvements, along with environmental and infrastructure challenges, and community development and social services, and environmental sustainability, and potentially ecotourism, which has been a very solid theme throughout maintaining some of our rural character and natural resources. Next slide. Then we get into the different, a few examples of the commissions with some of the questions that were done. We threw up the objectives from those areas that we feel planning and zoning has a role in, such as development using low impact development plans, consider regulations to maintain, protect natural resources, watersheds, habitats, recommend the use of native plantings in construction. That's a theme in and out of the POCD. And consult with the Conservation Commission regarding all natural resource policies and concerns, just as we've made the change in our regulations a number of years ago regarding doing the same thing with the Ag Commission. So again, using the what we would call a subject matter expert to bring us up to speed when it comes to something specific, whether it's conservation, agriculture, some of the other disciplines. Next slide. So our discussion topic, and these were questions that Mike generated, which are very thought-provoking and helped out. We actually spent most of the time on the first 2 topics. We actually ran out of time to give full shrift to the last 2 topics. But again, how do we protect open space that's in private hands? Where do we need more open space? How to preserve and support existing farms and farmland, and natural resources or characteristics you feel in town should preserve that aren't already. So again, very lively discussion on all of these topics, and we have notes from that, which we, as the subcommittee, will use as part of our decision-making process moving forward. Next slide. Recommendations from Economic Development Committee. Annually review regulations and ordinances for business-friendly adjustments. establish a system for first point of contact for businesses interested in coming into Ashford, which would include the selectmen, economic development, and planning and zoning, which I think is a great group for getting a basis. I guess the example that comes to mind, and Janet shared this the other night, which was Bottle Farms over on 89 at the corner there, the sharp turn on 89. That one of the reasons they came here was our ag-friendly zoning regulations. And and I remember they did do a preliminary meeting with us to find out about those and with what they wanted to do at Bodel Farms. Would it be received well in Ashford? And we're recommending that more and more for many of the businesses looking to come here. But I think this first contact group would be very helpful in giving them a feeling of whether they would be successful coming to Ashford with their business. And again, talking about the special planning areas, the I-84, the IID zone, the West Ashford along 74 and 44, the intersection there, and the Cadle Rock property that is in the hands of the governance, the selectman's office, and trying to work through that with a number of grants to try and get us up to speed and make that a viable opportunity for us. Next slide. And so again, the questions to generate discussion, what types of non-residential development is most desirable, where are the most appropriate places to be located, and are there projects in nearby communities in town that the town should emulate? Again, good community discussion taking place on that. And recommendations from the Housing Authority, which has a lot to do with our affordable housing, reduce or eliminate lot sizes in favor of soil-based zoning, which is an underlying theme that we've talked about in PZC, instead of just having the lot size of 2 acres. Allow us a right middle density housing in targeted areas, or the development retrofit of large historic homes into multi-family homes. Zoning regulations for cluster housing, incentivizing starter homes and pocket neighborhoods, and promoting accessory dwelling uses as a concept for existing property owners. Next slide. So again, Janet did a nice presentation on this as to where in town, what alternative housing types be most suitable. Should the town allow middle density housing by right? One of the topics that were in there. And should the town consider eliminating minimum lot sizes, as I said, the 2-acre lot sizes, in favor of soil-based zoning. And the diagram there happens to show a 4-family, 4-person home that was a home that was turned into a 4-person location. Was that built or was that already existing, Mike?
That was proposed.
That was proposed. Okay, thank you. All right, and the last topic for the discussion topics had to do with programs and infrastructure. Everyone was very, very tired by the end. It was coming up on 9 o'clock. So again, services or facilities that don't exist in Ashford that should. The town center, a town community center was a suggestion. Should these improvements be prioritized? Even if they result in the increase in taxes to residents. And again, anything that people want to do, we made this clear, they've got to be ready to pay for it, because, people could say, oh, you can get a grant. Well, you can get a grant for some things. You can't get a grant for everything. And again, are there areas, specific roads or intersections in towns of concern that we should focus on regarding our infrastructure? So, and then we just went into the what's next after having those topic discussions. We take the input from the survey and public listening, complete our outreach to the town agencies, draft language, identify a top 10. What we want to do is a top 10 planning and zoning objectives. And we say, it would be great to do one per year, but I mean, we could potentially be working on more than one in a year's time, but it would be great to give each one the proper amount of time to get done and taken care of and bring it to its conclusion within a year's time of addressing it. Provide draft to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is you folks, present a draft to the Board of Selectmen, and then lastly, present a draft at public hearing once Planning and Zoning, Board of Selectmen have approved, and then moving that Planning and Zoning to an official approval we can send to the state. And that was it. Again, we were very, very proud of the citizens showing up, 50 people. Janet, did you want to say something?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I know I ran through that. Any questions from anyone? Okay. Very good. We're going to speak about review the IID Special Development District draft that Mike had developed. So Mike, last time you ran us through a great flow chart of the two different ways that we've been doing things. Well, the one way we've been doing things and a proposed way of doing things with the special development zone. I think you got a lot of positive feedback from that. Help us. What are our next steps?
Sure. So I'm gonna just bring up, been trying to sort of do this incrementally so that it's not a situation where we just put a whole draft in front of the commission and send it for a hearing and you know, you've looked at it for 1 or 2 meetings before it goes to the commission. So every time that we've kind of looked at a draft, there's been some comments, some questions, some discussion, and I've taken notes and kind of tweaked it and refined it. So I'm going to show you, I'll share my screen and I will just take you through the edits that I made following the discussion from the last meeting. So there were a couple of things that kind of came up, and they may have come up just in my head as far as things that I think we need to improve on or questions that came from commissioners. But one of the things that occurred to me and we kind of talked about was this idea that depending on the types of uses or the category of uses, that all uses are not necessarily created equal, in that, for example, retail could mean any number of things, right? It at its core, it's a, you know, business that is selling things to the general public. So there's a lot of different types of businesses that could fall into retail. And so I think what I was trying to do is understand how to increase the specificity that we could get in the application stage to know specifically the types of uses that are proposed and really understand the extent of what is proposed. So one of the things I had kind of considered and I put in here, if you look at section B, which is at the top of the second page there, the stuff in red is what has changed since the last time you saw it. So the first item requires they submit a narrative statement of uses, which includes, one, the intent of the proposed district. So again, telling us the intent overall of the master plan. Number 2, we had in there the proposed narrative statement, which also includes a description of the proposed uses. So I've added, including the applicable trip generation code defined by the most recently adopted Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. So this is a manual that traffic engineers use to determine and estimate the approximate trips per day based upon a specific use. And so that is, you know, that has it distinguishes between, you know, many dozens of uses. And those use codes are how a traffic engineer then derives what the AM and PM peak travel might be, how many additional trips per day would be generated during, you know, peak hours, off peak hours. This is how they would assess the road that the business is proposed on to determine if the proposed traffic upon development would have a substantial effect, no effect. So I thought it was sort of a good qualifying statement to include some language in there, because especially when you talk about industrial uses or you know, other types of uses that aren't necessarily the traditional, you know, 5 or 10 uses that every set of zoning regs have, how that business is operated is really going to affect the way in which it should be reviewed. And so my thinking was, this is a sort of a technical document that is it's not subjective in the sense that we don't have one for Ashford. We don't decide what it is. We don't pull something out of the sky. You know, these codes are defined and used across the board. So I thought that was potentially something that could be useful. The next one is something that has come up, and it's requiring the provision for low impact development techniques. So our regulations are set up a little bit differently than some towns, because we sort of have our standards kind of all in different sections of the regs. We have something for lighting, we have something for parking, we have you know, provision for landscaping. We have them kind of in different sections. We don't just say every single site plan has to be developed with all of the following criteria, and then we include it all there. And so my initial thought was that we should amend the site plan standards to include low impact development, but it's not a clean and direct connection that we can make, because there's several sections that apply to site development. So what I included was language in here that it now reads that a conceptual site plan depicting the proposed schematic design of the site, including, and then a new number 4, which would be the provision for low impact development techniques to the extent practicable, which provide for the catchment, treatment, and improvement of stormwater generated from the proposed development. So what we're asking them to do is at that conceptual stage to show us what their approach will be, again, at the conceptual level. They're not going to have the whole thing designed yet, but what their plan is for how they're going to deal with the stormwater that'll be generated, with a goal of having them improve that water quality, not just when it all runs off, it's going to go into this detention pond over here and it'll evaporate or it'll perk into the ground. And if not, it'll stay there in perpetuity. So we're really asking for them to put some effort into engineering a stormwater solution that will provide for treatment of that water. I included the language "to the extent practicable" because depending on the site, depending on the water table, on ledge, on clay, on any number of things, if there's adjacent wetlands, water courses, etc., it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. So different sites will allow for different things. In some cases, if the water table is very high, they may be limited in what they can do, because as soon as they try to put anything in the ground, they're going to hit the water table and those things won't function in the same way. So I have that in there to sort of acknowledge that you can't just have a one-size-fits-all approach to the way that it's done, but I want to make it clear that we're saying you should catch the water and treat the water and improve the quality of that water based upon whatever you're generating. Any questions so far? Thoughts?
This is Janet. I think that's a great addition, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, I really tried to figure out how we could get it into the regs overall, because I think this is a goal that the commission has had for developments across the board. But I think there's a little bit more of a reorganization that we'll have to do it. I think it's worth it. So I think that's probably another goal that we need to kind of dig into after this. The other thing that I included in here and clarified was for the site plan approval at the end. It states that obviously a site plan approval is required, which is that fully engineered, fully designed plan. And it shall, so this is stating what the commission is going to review it against. And this language can be added to or adjusted. But what I have here now is it's going to be reviewed against the valid and approved master plan. So number one, the reason we have valid is because the master plan is not good in perpetuity. And so we want to make sure that the master plan is valid and that the site plan is in compliance with the master plan. If they get a master plan approval, what they come back with is not compliant with it, and we don't take up the site plan because the regs require they have to be consistent. 300-22A of the regulations is the existing site development standards, which talks about they have to have a site plan that shows wetlands and water courses and flood zone, and they have to have landscaping. They have to show it's that litany of items that is in our application requirements that says all the stuff that has to be on the site plan. They have to have a survey. They have to show abutters. They have to have a zoning table. They have to show topography, the direction of north arrow. They have to show adjacent roadways. So I'm pointing to this, number one, because we don't need to have duplicative language, but number two, just to make it clear that that site plan standard, we're holding them to the same criteria that we already have in place. We're not moving the needle on that. And then, as I kind of alluded to a few minutes ago, I've also added any special standards as defined by Article 6. So these are the special, what are called special standards in our regs, and that's section 300-28 to 300-38.1 that apply for various circumstances, like I said, lighting, parking. So based upon the type of project that's proposed and what's happening there, you know, that section about outdoor lighting, we're going to make sure that it's in compliance with the outdoor lighting section. There's parking table and, you know, the requirements of that section. So again, wanting to make sure that if we had standards that were in place and they were applicable, that we maintain that consistency throughout any site plan that comes before the commission. So this is essentially incorporating the master plan approval, and, you know, without saying it directly because I'm referencing the sections, 300-22 and then the, you know, the requirements of those special standards are for all intents and purposes how every single project that comes before the commission is reviewed. So when Dollar General, when Cumberland Farms, when those buildings are built, these sections that are referenced, those are the standards in the regs that would have been applicable. So I'm just creating that consistency. Any questions on that? And it's not really new information. I'm just making sure we capture these sections in this reg, but the standards are all exactly the same and have been in place for many years. The categories of uses I didn't touch. The only other thing that I added is I think it's important to have, again, to clarify, and you don't want to have to try to decide this after the fact, a section about modifications. The section placeholder was there, just didn't have any language. So I've added two items. One, any modification to a proposed master plan shall require the review and approval of the commission. So again, if you get a master plan approved, it's valid, but you want to make changes to the master plan, you've got to come back to the commission. So I'm stating that clearly. Two, any modifications to a previously approved and valid site plan for which a master plan approval has been issued shall be reviewed and approved by the commission. Any modification which is found to meet the criteria below may be reviewed administratively by the zoning enforcement officer in consultation with the chair. So this is language that a lot of towns have, and it's meant to not create sort of additional process when there's realistic minor modifications that come up, particularly if we're talking about projects that are bigger than a couple, you know, an 8,000 square foot Dollar General. They may find that there's, you know, some tweaks that need to be made to a building layout once they get their cost estimates in, or maybe DOT tells them they need to modify their site flow a little bit. Minor changes that don't disrupt the overall development, that are fairly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, not requiring them to basically go back to the beginning when they're at the 99-yard line is very common. We have language that's similar to this in our regulations for other things, but because this is new, the way that it's written doesn't really apply. So I took similar language and started off at a baseline here. These things can be adjusted, not suggesting that the percentages are final by any means, obviously, but so again, the way that 2 is written, it should be, any modification should be reviewed by the commission, unless it's found to meet the criteria below, in which case then the ZEO can review it with the chair. And that would, you know, involve the items 1, 2, and 3. So the first one, such modification does not propose to increase the building size, height, building or impervious coverage by 10% or more. The second is that any changes proposed to the building do not exceed 25% of the building square footage, or to the proposed building use, sorry. So that is a sort of really ugly sentence, admittedly. But what I'm trying to get to is, if someone proposes a building and let's say it's 10,000 square feet, what we don't want them to do is come to the commission and say, here's the uses that I'm going to have in that building. And then at the end, come back and say, actually, the uses are going to be something entirely different. So if something is changed in a minor fashion that doesn't increase, you know, traffic, let's say they go to a less intense use, this is telling them they can only make those changes on the fly to up to 25% of the building. So they can't say, oh, we're going to have, you know, a coffee shop and a hair salon, and we're going to have this, we're going to have that, and then come back and say, as it turns out, we're going to change that, and 3/4 of the building is actually going to be a machine shop. We want to give them a little bit of flexibility, because let's say they're operating and they say, oh, geez, you know, we lost our tenant, we want to swap them out. If it's a similar use and it's just a small portion of the building, they really shouldn't have to come back to the commission if the building isn't changing, the parking isn't changing, the traffic isn't being increased. So that's something to think about. And again, these numbers can be adjusted, or the percentages. And then the third one is that modification will not reduce on-site green space by less than 5%. So again, if you're doing anything on site that's going to reduce green space by more than 5%, then you've got to go to the commission. But if you're doing a little tweak, like I said, if DOT or the fire marshal or somebody says, hey, this layout of the parking lot needs to be shifted a little bit, and it's going to result in a little bit of a tweak, we don't want to send them through the process again just to meet the criteria of another agency, as an example. So, but recognizing the intent of and importance of stormwater and runoff and infiltration and all the things that we've talked about, that's why I sort of dropped that back to a 5%. And that is where that was the last of the changes that I made. Everything else is as it's been for the last couple of meetings.
Mike, can you define green space? Is that another name for open space?
In my mind, it is more inclusive than open space. So this would include any landscaping, lawn area, anything on the site that is green.
Okay, so anything that's on a driveway or a building or, okay, all right. Thank you. Anything from the commissioners?
I think we are, so a couple of things that we've talked about, you know, with other text amendments, but I will just state for anybody else who's listening and for the commission's reminder, once something is reviewed or once something is submitted to go to a public hearing for consideration, we can always make changes that are more restrictive during the public hearing or after the public hearing closes before the commission adopts. So the language that I have there that says you can make changes on the use of the building up to 25%, we can always move that to 20 or to 15 or to 10 or to 5. We just can't go beyond 25 to 30. So if you're feeling like we're in an okay place, but you're not sure about some of those things, as long as you feel like these parameters are as sort of wide open as you'd want them to be, then we can continue. If you feel like things need to be opened up further, then we need to do that before it goes forward. The next, in my mind, the only other outstanding item that we have talked about that I think would make sense if you feel like this draft is at a point where it's ready to be sort of considered in totality and maybe formalized, into the public hearing realm and refer to CROG, blah, 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 would be for me to try to endeavor to put together that mapping, and try to, as best as possible, identify the total universe of parcels that meet the eligibility requirements of C. I think that knowing how many parcels are eligible is important, so that when this gets referred to the public, you have an idea. Are we talking about 1,000 parcels? Are we talking about one parcel? Are we talking about 15, 50? So if this feels like it's almost ready, I think that would be sort of the next last step, and then present to the commission, here's the parcels that we've identified, here's the final draft. If this looks good, then I would say refer it, schedule the public hearing, and start the public process.
And right now, C, remind me, is 35 acres?
We have a couple of things. It's 35 acres. It
Yeah.
has to have frontage on, be contiguous with, or accessible by state highway, and located in general commercial, technology development, or interstate interchange development district. Those got to meet all three.
And right now you have an estimate of about 4 parcels that meet that requirement. Is that right?
I think it was more than 4. I don't
Oh.
know how many it was. I had just tried to look through like hunting and pecking, but
Okay.
I will work with the assessor to try to get an actual legitimate count now that we are, much more fleshed out in the language than we were.
Is it a fool's errand to look at 35 and to look at 25 to see what the bump would be?
No, I think that shouldn't be too hard to do. I can do both.
I would just be curious as to what that change would be. If it's not a significant change, then there would be no sense in doing it. But if it's a significant change, it's something to consider and look at. Thank
Yeah.
you. Anything else from the commissioners? Please review. I'm sorry, go ahead, Janet.
I didn't see this on our meeting material. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see this on our meeting material. Can we make sure we get copies of it?
Yeah, I was making some final tweaks again. I went back and watched the recording. So this is fairly recent, but I'll make sure that it goes out. No problem.
Besides the fact, it's also still a draft too.
Thank you.
Public consumption can, people could start to be looking at something that we really not have approved or move forward with.
Oh, okay.
But we want the commissioners to be able to review it on their own also. So thank you, Mike. Anything from the commissioners? Anything else from you, Mike, on that?
So I guess, so as next step, I think, especially because it seems like we've got a number of people that are absent tonight, I will try to get for the May meeting a map of the current eligibility parcels that would currently be eligible, and then parcels that would be eligible if this were adjusted to 25 acres, so that when the commission sort of looks at it, and I think the intent would be to try to get it ready to refer, so we could leave the May meeting with a decision on, is this at a point that we want to go forward and schedule it for public hearing? So I'll have that for May. And I will
Great.
make sure that the commission gets a draft, a copy of this most recent draft, so you can take a look at it. And if you have any other comments or thoughts in between now, obviously let me know, and we can make edits.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, PZC-25-1, special permit application per section 317C to allow for alcohol consumption on an outdoor patio and live entertainment at 196 Shady Road, known as Westford Hill Distillers. Owner applicant Margie Chady. This is really not for discussion at this point. It's simply a receipt of the application. The application materials have been posted. Is there any questions or concerns from the commissioners regarding the application for receipt?
So I'll just mention that it'll be received and based on timing, we have what we need. So this will be for public hearing at the May meeting.
I have one quick question on F on the application. Obviously, it's a large parcel. There's no need for Ashford Wetlands Commission input, correct?
No, they're not.
According
From my
according to
review,
the Liquor Control Board, I guess.
yeah, this is more of how they're conducting the existing use. They're not proposing any new physical improvements,
Right,
so they wouldn't have any need for a wetlands review.
right. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Which you're not supposed to have discussion. Is there a motion for acceptance of the
Motion to
application?
accept.
Motion to accept by Jerry. Is there a second?
I'll second, Janet.
Janet Bellamy, second. All those in favor of accepting the application for the special permit application, PZC-25-1, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you. All right, last item under new business is the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies. A couple of our members were able to attend. It happened to be, I think the night before our listening session, and we were doing some last minute planning on the listening session. So Nord has volunteered to give us kind of a overview of that dinner and speakers. So what'd you have to eat, Nord? You're muted. You're still muted. You're still muted. There you go.
Yeah, it was a 4-course meal and it was excellent food. And they let us take some home too in little boxes. The lead speaker was a retired judge who had gone to work for a law firm that specialized in affordable housing, appeals, affordable housing appeals. The towns could appeal affordable housing being forced upon them. And he said that of all the appeals that he had handled, all the appeals were rejected, except for one appeal that he had where the applicant had to rewrite some of the specifications, and then that was able to go through after it was rewritten. So pretty much hard to appeal affordable housing once it's forced upon you. What he suggested was that if we had affordable housing in our regulations, town regulations in black and white, then the change could go forward in a direction that we wanted instead of having it forced upon us anywhere that someone else wants. And if you think about that, we could use it, it should be bulletproof. So we could get maybe help from NECOG and maybe from the town council to help us to write those regs. And Mike might have some thoughts on that too, because he's probably handled it. But okay, so that happened at the meeting. But one of the most electrifying things at the meeting was not from the speakers, but from the people in the audience, the members of the Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission kept questioning the speaker about affordable housing, and they were irate. They were extremely irate. I don't know what happened in Cheshire, but something happened that had a negative effect on the town in a serious way. Now, one thing that they mentioned, not specifically Cheshire, I don't remember what town it was.
Oh, South Windsor,
It was South Windsor?
South Windsor.
Thank you, Jerry.
He was quite irate also.
Yeah. Well, one town had to build an additional high school and a middle school after affordable housing was constructed to handle the additional students. And that was a burden for the taxpayers that they had to pay for that. But the people in Cheshire, I would like to find out more about what happened there because they were extremely irate. Does anybody have any questions? That was a worthwhile event. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the overview on that. I was glad you and Jerry were able to attend that.
I have a question for Mike, maybe. Isn't affordable housing only up to like 10% of your housing stock?
So, if a town does not have 10% of its housing stock set aside as deed restricted affordable, then that town is subject to the 8-30G appeals process that Nord is describing, which essentially means that someone can come in and propose an affordable housing project without the need for essentially without having to meet any of the zoning setbacks or density or
But
height, etc.
how did they put in so much affordable housing that they needed new schools?
Who?
He said in South Windsor that they needed new schools because of affordable housing.
So my guess is that, so we are actually in the process of writing Cheshire's POCD, and I'm not involved in that project, but I think Cheshire and South Windsor similarly have seen an immense pressure for housing, but I don't believe that they've seen an immense pressure, nor have they seen an immense sort of proliferation of affordable housing. So if you look at the data statewide, any type of housing that is not single family detached, large houses on large lots, generates very, very, very few children. So, I don't know the metrics of South Windsor, especially. I know that a lot of the developments that have gone up and are going up in Cheshire are not affordable. They're simply apartments and condos and those types of things. So it's probably that the commission members didn't quite get it right when they were yelling at the judge during the meeting.
Thank you.
Now, a developer can propose a development, a huge development potentially, and offer up 10% of that or some percentage of that as affordable to qualify, correct?
Right, yeah. So if they meet the standards for the set aside,
Yep.
but they don't, 100 units that only has 10 or 15% set aside as deed restricted affordable wouldn't qualify for the 8-30G appeal. They wouldn't be exempt from zoning. The standard has to be an affordable development, not just have affordable units.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I'm just looking up the state 2024 affordable housing appeals list. South Windsor has 6.5% of its housing stock as deed restricted affordable, and Cheshire has 3.68%. So they're both subject to that appeals process. But I don't know how many units they've had developed. The 2025 list isn't out yet, but my guess is they've just had a lot of housing pressure.
And if you think about it, if you think of whatever 2,000 households in Ashford and 10% of that versus God, whatever the households are in South Windsor or Cheshire for that matter, and the percentage of that getting up to 10%, it's significant. I mean, it depends on what your percentage of your bottom number is, basically. You know, that 2,000 for us at 10% is 200. Whereas if South Windsor has 10,000, 20,000 households, um, you know, you're talking much more significant 10%.
Yeah, I mean, if we built another um, that senior housing development, which the name just fell out of my head, across from Town Hall.
Pompey Hollow, yep.
Yeah, if we built another one of those that was essentially 1.5 its size, 1.5x, we would be pretty much where we would need to be. But yes, whereas South Windsor has they've got about 11,000 housing units. So there's a yes, your point is still the percentages are equivalent, but there's a lot of units that have to be added. You know, they would need to add, you know, several hundred units to get to where they need to be. So the volume is still much more substantial.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Again, Nord and Jerry, thank you very much for the recap on that. Appreciate it. Moving to the zoning officer report. Mike.
So there's two things that I wanted to go over quickly. One was on the is on the agenda, which is the review of application fees. This has come up because we're sort of in the throes of budget season, and one of the things that, you know, we're looking at and other commissions have sort of started to see is that the cost of submitting an application does not necessarily cover what we the application fee does not necessarily cover the cost. So we're bringing in, you know, application fee when the applications are submitted. And then, you know, as is the case with almost all of the applications that this commission sees, they require a public hearing, but we have to do that, you know, twice before the meeting and then once after. So we're running anywhere from you know, $80 to $200 per application fee or publication of application. Sorry, I was looking at the numbers. So it might cost us $80 each time. So 2 up front and 1 after. Might cost us $210 each time. And so the net result is that the general government budget, the P&Z's budget, defrays the cost of those application fees. We don't know what they are until the applications are submitted because it's based upon us drafting a legal notice. And so the complexity of the application, what it's seeking, how we have to describe it, play into the length of the legal notice, which play into the cost. And so we have some that are $80 and some that are 200. And then we have to do it again, obviously, at the end. So there was just the suggestion was made sort of unilaterally across all boards and commissions that we take the opportunity to look and make sure that if our fees are not where they're supposed to be and we essentially are losing money every time someone submits an application, that we should take a look at that to make sure that we're at least breaking even. And we don't want to make any money, but we don't want to have the general budget sort of defraying the cost of the folks that are submitting. So sort of just a note, I don't have a lot of information prepared on it at this point. I haven't gone through historically our legal notice fees in any great detail to tell you what our average cost is, but unless anybody is vehemently opposed, I'll sort of be looking at that. And when I have my arms around it, come back to you guys and show you kind of what the numbers play out to be.
Okay, great. Nord, you had a question?
I have a question for Mike. There's a significant amount of land clearing across the street from Dollar General store. Do you know what's going in over there?
Nothing, because we haven't issued any approvals of any kind. My guess, though I don't want to take that, I wouldn't say take it to the bank, would be that that property has been on the market for a really long time. They haven't had a lot of luck. And so a lot of times what happens is commercial property owners will spend a little bit of money to clear some timber so that people that look at it get a sense of what the site actually looks like rather than staring at a bunch of trees. So we have I haven't seen anything on the wetlands agenda. I don't even know if there's wetlands there, but we've issued nothing. There's no building permits, no zoning permits, haven't had even any inquiries about it. So at this point, it's just tree removal.
When I was in college, one of my roommates got a construction job there during the summer for a summer job. And they cleared that whole lot off and they were going to build something there, but they found significant amounts of ledge that would require blasting. So the project was abandoned and it's been sitting there empty ever since. So now it's all overgrown. That was 40 years ago when that happened.
The ledge is still there too. So,
Yeah, it's still there. So Mike, what about Dollar General? Have you heard anything from them?
Dollar General? I haven't heard anything from Dollar General.
what about Dollar General?
What type of work is going to be done in there? It's the store right next to Dollar General.
Um,
The
I
lot right
haven't
next
heard,
to it.
I haven't heard anything from them. I know that they had started some work on the building to sort of get it structurally sound. And the building official had been watching it and decided last week that it was at the point where they had made it sound and the rest needed building permits. So he did issue a stop work just to make sure they knew they had to come in and get permits for anything that they were doing. So they will be coming in to at least show what renovations they're doing to the site, but there's been no discussions. They haven't come in about anything pertaining to the use. I don't have any information on that.
I stopped in there and talked to some of the construction workers. I talked to them in Spanish because they didn't speak English, but the masons that were working there told me it was going to be a car dealership. Now, I don't know how true that is. I'm kind of skeptical on that myself, but that's what I was told.
I mean, that was the last, I mean, it was obviously a service station. That was the last use. So I don't know if they were talking about what it was or what it will be, but any type of automotive repair, et cetera, obviously needs our, some type of approval. It may not need to come to this commission if they're just resuming the prior operation, even if it was a million years ago, but they will need also DMV approval, which requires local sign off. So they got a lot of stuff that they'll have to do.
And local sign off would come from the Board of Selectmen?
It would come from, depending on what they wanted to do, most likely it would require staff sign off, fire marshal sign off, et cetera.
Okay. All right.
A lot of times they don't want to tell you the truth about what's going on until it goes in.
Well, they can't even submit to DMV without the town's endorsement of their application. So they're going to have an awful hard time trying to make that happen, if that's the case.
Keep the cart in front of the horse here, or the horse in front of the cart. Thank
The
you.
other thing that I wanted to just show was we had looked previously at the sort of P&Z application form addendum that had been discussed. And so you had seen most of this, but I kind of adjusted the format a little bit. These are all the standards that come out of the zoning regs. I've shortened a few of them because there's a bunch that go on and on that say, it sort of had sentences and sentences all sort of saying what I believe to be implied. And again, this is an application form. We're not citing the zoning regs. So the information on the left is the stuff that we have in our regs as being part of the submission. And then we sort of have this thing here where they can check off that they've provided it, that it is not applicable, or that they're requesting a waiver. And then I have, rather than having them try to smoosh this into the whole form, I just have in the top here, for any item which a waiver is requested, please provide information as to why such waiver is appropriate. So if they are asking for a waiver, they should include in their application to you guys why they feel they should not be required to submit it. So this would be not a regulation, but this would be sort of an addendum to the application form that we would ask everybody to submit. So I kind of had tweaked that and refined it a little bit from the last one that you saw. And that's all I got.
So Mike, if something is missing, you would have the, you would just send it back to them to complete it.
Well, yeah, I
Correct.
mean, the idea here would be that they would have to check something off, right? So they should check each row, they should check something. If they decide that they don't think anything is applicable, then that's where the commission at least would have this form and could say, well, wait a minute, why don't you think the location of any required setbacks and yard lines are applicable?
Okay.
So you'd hope to sort of lead them there, and we would obviously encourage them to do that. But yeah, I wouldn't reject it, but I would strongly encourage them to pull together something that was sort of more complete or comprehensive before we went forward.
So something like the location of all water bodies, water courses and wetlands on the lot as determined by a soil scientist licensed in the state of Connecticut. If they had an arid location, a lot that they were dealing with, that would be an NA, correct? As opposed to a waiver.
If they were outside the upland review, they weren't proposing any soil disturbance, had a 100-acre parcel and weren't anywhere near it, that would be why it's not applicable in my
Right.
mind versus someone who says, well, I'm going to be within the upland review, but here's why I don't think it matters. And they could say, I'm requesting a waiver. And the reason for that is I've already got my inland wetlands approval from the agent and he didn't require me to delineate. So I don't think I need to do it. Something
Right.
like that.
Right, exactly. Okay. I was just trying to find out what type of examples for that. Nora, do you have another question?
Yes, I have a suggestion on this. This is excellent document, but you're calling it an addendum. A lot of people don't know what an addendum is. I would suggest changing the name of it to a checklist so that which is what it is. It's really a nice checklist. So people will understand what it is.
Okay. Easy enough.
Uh, I really like this, Mike. This gives it some, again, I don't want to say teeth. It just makes people, especially looking for a special permit or something like this, know exactly what it is they need to look at and do. Uh, and I know you've worked with people frequently to try and get them aware of what it is they need to do. But you can only lead a horse to water. Um, yeah, again, I really like this. What, and you said it's not as obviously it's not part of the zoning reg, so it's something that we can actually start doing with
Yeah.
commission approval.
Yeah. I mean, so the stuff on the left basically comes right out of that section of the regs, and we're not proposing any amendments. So we're just updating the application form. There's no,
Right, and which is
you
not
know,
part of the regs.
yeah. So that can be done, you know, fairly, fairly quickly. We'll just have to include it as an attachment. Tell folks that they're required to submit it, get it online, and get it updated, etc. I don't think I have any. I have like one or two people that have requested applications, and I don't know if we're going to see an application or not. So, there
Yeah.
may be a couple of stragglers that come in without it. But yeah, I mean, we would just get it included, and then it would just become part of the existing application form.
So actually, really nothing actionable on our part as a commission.
I mean, I think unless somebody has any concerns about using it, we're I think okay. I can then start working it in.
I would like to get kind of the full commission if we could. So can we table this for next session and so that everyone gets a chance to review this and give input on it?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Yep. So we'll just leave it here. And then if anybody has thoughts or questions, you can let me know. And then if not, we'll do one final whack with the whole group next month, and then we can get it inserted into the forms.
Great. Excellent. Uh, anything else, Mike?
That's all I got.
That's all you got? Okay, very good. And I want to thank both Mike and for Bonnie, the land clerk, person. She helped us work the listing and taking in the RSVPs and such for the listening session. Provided us with names and lists and such, and it was very, very helpful for that. And again, Mike's efforts with the slides and all too, as well as being a sounding board and our resource for the people that were there. Okay, that is it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jerry moving for adjournment. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Nord got it in there. Nord, thank you. All those in favor of adjournment for this session? Say
Aye.
aye. All those opposed? Yeah, like you'd really raise your hand to say you're opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank all the commission members. Thank you for your input and be safe. And we will see you next month. POCD, I'll see you next week.